The letter arrived on a Tuesday, crumpled and stained, as if it had been handled by 100 careless hands. It was the kind of letter that could stop a heart. Eleanor Grayson's heart, to be exact, 93 years old and still beating with the stubborn rhythm of a woman who'd outlived 2 wars, 3 husbands, and a lifetime of small betrayals. But this betrayal, spelled out in cold bureaucratic print, was the cruelest yet. Her pension, her lifeline, had been siphoned away by a faceless scam, leaving her with nothing but the echo of her own disbelief. Eleanor sat in her faded armchair, the one her late husband Henry had carved with his own hands, her fingers tracing the worn grooves as her grandson, Caleb, read the letter aloud. Her world was darkness now, her eyes clouded by time, but her mind was a steel trap, catching every tremor in Caleb's voice. He was 24, a lanky boy with his grandfather's wild curls and a heart too big for his own good. "They took it all, Gran," he said, his voice breaking. "Every cent you earned teaching those kids for 40 years. Eleanor's lips tightened, not in despair, but in defiance. She'd survived worse, survived this too. But Caleb? Caleb was fire where she was stone, and she felt the heat of his anger rising. The scam was meticulous, a spider's web spun by a company called Silvercare Solutions. They'd posed as a government agency, promising to secure pensions for the elderly. Eleanor had trusted the voice on the phone, a smooth-talking woman named Clara who'd called her dear and sent official-looking forms. By the time Eleanor realized the forms were fake, her savings were gone $87,000. Every penny she'd saved to keep her modest home and maybe, just maybe, leave something for Caleb. The police were sympathetic but useless. The scammers were ghosts, their trail vanishing into offshore accounts. "There's nothing we can do," the detective said, and Eleanor heard Caleb's fist hit the table. Caleb wasn't one to sit still. He'd grown up in Eleanor's shadow, learning her stories of standing up to bullies in her schoolyard days, of marching for civil rights when the world told her to stay quiet. She was his hero, blind or not, and he'd be damned if he let her last years be defined by this theft. That night, he sat at his laptop, the glow illuminating his face in their cramped living room. He wasn't a hacker, not really, just a community college dropout with a knack for computers and a grudge that burned like a fever. He started digging, chasing digital footprints through forums and shady websites, piecing together the scam skeleton. Silvercare wasn't a company. It was a front, a hydra with a dozen aliases, preying on the vulnerable. Days turned to weeks, and Caleb became a ghost himself, barely sleeping, fueled by coffee and fury. Eleanor sensed his obsession, her fingers brushing his arm as she brought him tea. "Don't lose yourself, boy," she whispered, her voice a mix of warning and pride. But Caleb was already too far gone, tracing IP addresses to a call center in a distant city, uncovering names. Clara wasn't Clara, but a man named Victor Kane, a con artist with a rap sheet longer than Eleanor's life. Caleb's plan began to form, not just to expose Victor, but to dismantle his entire operation. He didn't tell Eleanor everything. He didn't want her to worry, but she knew her grandson, knew the storm brewing in his silence. Then came the twist. Caleb wasn't alone in his hunt. One night, a message popped up on his screen from someone calling themselves Sparrow. They claimed to be a whistleblower, someone who'd worked for Silvercare before realizing what it was. Sparrow fed Caleb fragments of evidence, internal emails, bank records, even a grainy photo of Victor Kane at a lavish party, toasting with champagne while Eleanor ate canned soup in her cold kitchen. Sparrow was cautious, their identity hidden, but their rage matched Caleb's. "I want them stopped," Sparrow wrote. "But I'm scared." Caleb didn't trust easily, but he needed Sparrow's intel. Together, they mapped the scam's network, a web stretching across 3 states, with Victor at its center. Eleanor, meanwhile, refused to be a victim. Blindness had never stopped her. She'd taught herself to navigate her home by memory, to cook by touch, to live with dignity. She began reaching out to others, her voice steady on the phone as she called old friends, neighbors, anyone who might have been targeted. She found them, dozens of elderly victims, their stories mirroring hers. They formed a quiet army, sharing names and dates, their anger a slow-burning fire. Eleanor's resolve fueled Caleb, but it also scared him. She was fragile, her heart weaker than she'd admit. "You're my eyes now, Caleb," she told him one evening, her hand squeezing his. Make them see what they've done. By the end of the first month, Caleb and Sparrow had enough to act. Victor's operation ran through a fake charity event, a gala to honor elderly veterans. It was a front to lure more victims, and Caleb saw his chance. He wasn't just going to report victory, was going to expose him in a way that would sting. But as he typed furiously, plotting to crash the gala's website with proof of the scam, Sparrow sent a final message. Be careful. Victor knows someone's after him. The words chilled Caleb, but he didn't stop. He couldn't. For Eleanor, for the others, he'd burn it all down. Caleb's fingers trembled as he hacked into the gala's website, his heart pounding like a war drum. The event was days away, a glittering affair in a downtown hotel where Victor Kane would smile for cameras while pocketing donations meant for veterans. Caleb's plan was simple but audacious. Replace the gala's homepage with a digital dossier screenshots of Victor's fake forms, Sparrow's leaked emails, and a list of victims, Eleanor's name at the top. He worked in the dead of night, Eleanor's soft snores drifting from her room, a reminder of why he couldn't fail. Sparrow's warnings gnawed at him. Victor wasn't just a con man. He was connected, with lawyers and muscle to protect his empire. Caleb's research uncovered whispers of a fixer, a man named Marcus, who cleaned up Victor's messes sometimes with threats, sometimes worse. Caleb pushed the fear down, focusing on the code scrolling across his screen. By dawn, the website was ready to flip, a ticking bomb waiting for the gala's spotlight. He didn't tell Eleanor, not yet. She'd worry, and her heart couldn't take it. Eleanor, though, was no bystander. Her phone calls had grown into a network, a coalition of the cheated widows, veterans, retirees who shared her fury. She organized them with the precision of her teaching days, her voice firm as she spoke at community centers, her cane tapping like a metronome. We're not invisible, she told them, her blind eyes blazing with purpose. They think we're weak, but we'll show them. Her group, calling themselves the Silver Voices, began writing letters to newspapers, demanding justice. Eleanor didn't know about Caleb's plan, but her work was amplifying his, a two-pronged attack on Victor's lies. The twist came on the eve of the gala. Sparrow revealed their identity, not a faceless hacker, but Lila, a 19-year-old intern who'd worked at Silvercare's call center. She'd been lured by the promise of easy money, only to discover the scam's ugliness. Lila had seen Eleanor's file, her photo clipped to a form, and it haunted Hera's grandmother, who reminded her of her own. I couldn't stay silent, Lila wrote to Caleb, her words raw. She'd risked everything to leak the files, even moving to a new city to hide from Victor's reach. Her courage shifted something in Caleb. This wasn't just his fight anymore. Lila became his partner, her insights sharpening his plan. The gala night arrived, and Caleb sat in a coffee shop across from the hotel, his laptop open, heart racing. Lila was there too, disguised in a hoodie, feeding him real-time updates from a burner phone. The website flipped at 8 p.m., just as Victor took the stage. The crowd gasped as screens in the ballroom displayed the truth. Silvercare Solutions is a fraud. Victims' names scrolled, their stories in stark black and white. Caleb watched from the coffee shop's window as chaos erupted, guests pulling out phones, reporters scrambling. Eleanor's name glowed on the screen, a beacon of her resilience. But Victor was quick. Within hours, his lawyers spun a counter-narrative, claiming the website hack was a smear campaign. Marcus, the fixer, was already moving, tracking IP addresses to find the culprit. Caleb's stomach dropped when Lila texted, "They're looking for us." He hadn't covered his tracks well enough. Panic clawed at him, but he thought of Eleanor, her voice in his head. "You're my eyes now." He couldn't stop, not when they were so close. The fallout was immediate and deafening. By morning, the hacked gala website was national news. Eleanor's story plastered across headlines. 93-year-old blind woman scammed. Grandson's revenge goes viral. Caleb's dossier spread like wildfire, shared across social media, with Silver Voices amplifying the outcry. Reporters camped outside Eleanor's home, but she faced them with quiet dignity, her cane steady, her voice unwavering. "This isn't just about me," she told them. "It's about all of us they thought they could forget." Caleb watched from the sidelines, pride warring with fear. Victor's team was fighting back, and Marcus was closing in. Caleb and Lila hid in a cheap motel, their laptops humming as they tracked the damage. Lila's fear was palpable, seeing Marcus's shadow in Victor's world, a man who didn't ask questions. "He'll find us," she whispered, her hands shaking. Caleb squeezed her shoulder, hiding his own terror. Their plan had worked too well. Victor's empire was crumbling, but he wasn't going down quietly. A late-night email from Sparrow, Lila's alias, confirmed it. Victor had hired private investigators, and Marcus was leading the hunt. Caleb's heart sank. He'd wanted justice, not a manhunt. Eleanor, unaware of the danger, kept the Silver Voices moving. They picketed Silvercare's fake offices, their signs bearing victims' names. The media loved it, gray-haired warriors demanding accountability. Eleanor's leadership gave Caleb time, but not much. He and Lila worked feverishly, leaking more evidence to the press. Bank records, voicemails, Victor's smirking face at another scam event. The public was enraged, but Caleb knew it wasn't enough. Victor's money bought silence, and Marcus was a bloodhound. The twist came when a stranger knocked on their motel door. Caleb froze, expecting Marcus, but it was Detective Ramirez, the cop who'd dismissed Eleanor's case. "I was wrong," Ramirez said, his face grim. He'd been digging on his own, moved by Eleanor's story, and found a witness, a disgruntled Silvercare accountant ready to testify. Ramirez offered protection, but Caleb hesitated. Trusting the police felt like a gamble, but Lila nodded. "We can't do this alone," she said. They agreed to meet the accountant, a nervous woman named Diane who'd kept copies of every transaction. Her evidence was a goldmine, tying Victor to offshore accounts. The meeting was tense, Diane's voice trembling as she handed over files. "Victor's ruthless," she warned. "If he knows I'm talking, I'm dead." Caleb's stomach churned, but Ramirez promised safety. As they left, Caleb noticed a black SUV idling nearby. Marcus? He couldn't be sure, but the hairs on his neck stood up. Back at the motel, he and Lila planned their next move. A public data drop, every file Diane gave them, posted anonymously online. It was a desperate play, but Victor's grip was slipping. Eleanor called that night, her voice sharp. "See? Caleb, you're in trouble, aren't you?" Caleb swallowed hard. "Just be careful, Gran." She laughed softly. "Careful? I'm 93. Trouble's my middle name." Her strength fueled him, but the weight of Marcus's shadow grew heavier. Lila's fear was contagious, and Caleb wondered if he'd gone too far. The data drop hit the internet like a tsunami. Diane's files, combined with Caleb's dossier, exposed Victor's network in brutal detail: names, dates, dollar amounts. Social media erupted, hashtags like Silvercare scam trending globally. Eleanor's face was everywhere, her story a rallying cry. The Silver Voices marched again, their numbers swelling, and prosecutors began circling Victor. Caleb and Lila watched from a new hideout, a friend's basement, their nerves frayed. "We did it," Lila whispered, but Caleb couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Marcus struck at dawn. Caleb woke to the sound of shattering glass, his laptop skidding across the floor. Marcus was a shadow in the dark, his gun glinting. "You're the kid who hacked the gala," he said, not a question. Lila screamed, but Caleb lunged, knocking Marcus into the wall. The gun fired, the bullet grazing Caleb's arm. Pain seared through him, but he tackled Marcus, wrestling the gun away. Lila called Ramirez, who arrived in minutes, cuffing Marcus. "You're lucky you're not dead," Ramirez growled, but Caleb barely heard him, his vision blurring. At the hospital, Eleanor sat by his bed, her hand gripping his. "Foolish boy," she whispered, tears in her voice. "You didn't have to do this." Caleb squeezed her hand, his throat tight. "I did, Gran." The news reported Marcus's arrest, linking him to Victor, whose empire was now in ruins. Diane's testimony sealed Victor's fate, and the Silver Voices celebrated, but Caleb felt no victory. His arm throbbed, and Lila's haunted eyes mirrored his own. They'd won, but at what cost? The twist came in the form of a letter from Victor, smuggled from jail. "You think this is over?" it read. "I know your name, Caleb." Eleanor burned the letter, her face fierce. "He's done," she said, but Caleb wasn't sure. The Silver Voices were planning a class action lawsuit, and Eleanor was their heart, her blindness no barrier to her fire. Caleb watched her lead, his chest aching with pride and fear. Victor's reach was long, and Caleb knew the fight wasn't over.